So now the Jewish people were so encouraged and challenged by Nehemiah's words that they enthusiastically said, "Let us rise up and build." So they were ready to go to work. But when their enemies heard that the Jews were going to rebuild the walls and the gates, their enemies laughed, ridiculed, and mocked them. "What is this thing about that you're going to do?" they asked the Jews. "Will you rebel against the king?" Nehemiah replied to the Jewish enemies that the God of heaven would prosper them and that he would enable them to do this great task. But the enemies continued to laugh and mock in disbelief. It was clear they did not want people, God's people, to have walls around their city of Jerusalem. It would be a gigantic task, but the work of the wall on the walls began. The names of the families who built the walls are recorded in the Bible. Each person did his share of manual labor. Some gathered stones, some mixed mortar to hold the stones together, others placed stones on top of each other, some cleared out rubbish and carried it away. Even children helped in that. Those who were more skilled worked on the gates as entrances and exits to the city. The daughters of one of the rulers of Jerusalem worked beside the men. People of all professions pitched in, such as Levites, goldsmiths, doctors, priests, and rulers. But the nobles of the Tekoites did not put their hands to the work. Perhaps they thought that manual work was beneath their dignity, or they were too good for it. Through rebuilding the wall around the city of Jerusalem was a gigantic task. Though rebuilding the wall around the city of Jerusalem was a gigantic task, each group tackled one small area. The walls began to go up. This reminds us of the importance of serving God in small ways. In God's word, you can all do something. What can you do at school or what can you do at home to make it a better place? What about what can you do at church? There are many people who need to hear about God's love. We can't tell them all, but we can tell some about Jesus. That is the secret of working for the Lord, being willing to do a small task and working together with others. Together, we can get a big job done for God's glory. So, as God knew that the temple needed walls around the city for protection against the enemy, so God knows that each of us who are in the temple of God today, for the Holy Spirit dwells in each believer, need walls of separation around our lives to protect us from sin and the devil. If we do not have walls of separation, we will soon be overrun with sin in our lives. What are walls of separation that we should have in our lives today? Some of those walls of separation from our separation from worldly places, such as maybe rock concerts, worldly movies, and places where drugs and alcohol and the occult are. We must determine not to go to such worldly places of sin. We must put a wall of separation from worldly practices if we are to stay pure and clean for God's service. We must have a wall of separation from disobedience and rebellion against our parents and even others in authority. We need to erect walls of obedience, honesty, truthfulness, and purity in our lives. It is not easy to erect these walls in our lives, for the devil won't like it, but the devil's crowd may laugh and mock at us, but God can help us if we ask him and work diligently to erect such walls of separation in our lives. So let's ask God to help us build strong walls of separation and protection around our lives.